Hello, English readers, and welcome to this new live read along. Today is chapter 12. If I'm right, yes. Today is chapter 12 from Little Women, this classic of American literature that we are reading at the moment. It's been 2 weeks now that we've been reading it, and this is the last week. This is it. So we still have today and Wednesday and 2 more days of live reading. 2 more days of live reading, and then we will be done with this beautiful story. This is an adaptation from Oxford Bookworms. It dates from 2008. I chose this adaptation as it was not too the level was the right one for my members and for you here who are adults. Otherwise, the Penguin Reader adaptation, the publisher that I really like reading, the ones that I've been reading, the adaptations that I've been using so far were from Penguin Readers. But the thing is, their adaptation was more for children, as it is a comic. It's actually here. I have it next to me. So it's this adaptation, and it looks very childish, and I mean, it much more suitable for young readers and young learners of English. So this is the reason why I didn't go for the Penguin Readers edition this time, but with this Oxford Bookworms one. And it's quite nice as well it's a nice adaptation either way. I usually prefer the Penguin Readers, especially if you are reading on your own or if you are as a teacher. I find it more structured. I find the Penguin Readers more structured and much better in terms of methodology, and it's much more rich in activities, much better structured, and yeah, more rich, I would say. There are much more activities, and it's a bit more thought, and yeah, I mean, it evolves with as everything, it gets better and better each year, and it over time, I mean. So of course, from this edition dating from 20, almost, not like, probably 15, 16 years ago, and the more recent ones, there are so many research that has been done in language learning and teaching. So obviously the teaching techniques and the reading approach with those graded readers are much more developed. And I actually, in one of my podcasts, I think it's the latest podcast, actually, it's episode 7, in which I'm doing a comparison. I compare this one with the other adaptation, and I also talk in much more details about what's inside each graded readers. There are other publishers who are adapting classic or contemporary novels for English readers, English learners. But so far I only have used this one and Penguin Readers. So maybe in the future I might try other graded readers to be able to compare them as well. But I've done this episode, this podcast episode. It's a video podcast episode. So if you want to check it out and know a little bit more, see how graded readers work. So if you're very new to reading in English and to this kind of reading material in English, a graded reader is a book that that is an adaptation of a classic of English literature or from a contemporary novel. And there are also graded readers that have been created especially for young learners and English learners on different topics, such as you will find biographies, short biographies, or completely new stories. And this way, there is a large, very wide panel of a very large range of different types of books and graded readers that you can choose from. So it's very rich and it gives you so many options to start with, especially if reading in English is something very new to you or to your children. If you're a parent and you want your children to, not your students, but your children to start reading in English and this way improve their level, then I highly, highly recommend these kinds of adaptations because they will really be a nice way for you to enter this world of literature, of English literature, and it's gonna be a nice and smooth kind of way to get into reading, because starting with original books or books made for English speakers, native English speakers, is very difficult, and you need a lot of motivation and confidence to get started. So I think with this kinds of material, it will definitely help you. Hello, Kitty, welcome today. Hi, how are you? I'm glad that you are here today, a little bit earlier than that it was originally planned, but it's nice to have you tonight. Today, it's not tonight, yes, it's today, this afternoon. Great, that's nice. All right. I'm good. I'm very well. Yeah, nice. And I am going to reveal next week the live, all the different live podcasts. They're going to be a new little video. I just published a video about myself and my journey learning English, because I had a question from Ada in a private message, and she was asking me those questions. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do a video to so that it might be also interesting for others, and it will allow people to get to know me better, especially if people don't have the time to attend my live reading. Because Katie, you already know a lot about me, and I think it was a nice. I thought it was a nice way for people to get to know me and get into this bookish world, and maybe join the book club. Who knows? We'll see. So yeah, it was again a very busy day. And tomorrow I will announce the live podcast week. It's a video in French tomorrow. And then I'm planning on also announcing our March reading. And that was interesting. Yeah, thank you. But I think that a lot of things that I think that I had talked to you about a little bit of my journey. So maybe it wasn't all new. But yes, soon there, yeah, I was saying that the next March live reading, if you remember, we had talked about this quite a while ago. So in March we will read. Yes, it wasn't new for me. So in March we will be reading Wuthering Heights. So tomorrow I'm going to announce everybody. Maybe some people will be excited about reading Wuthering Heights, hopefully. So I will announce this week as well. So a lot of announcements this week. I've got time. I'm on holiday, so I've got time to do this. So it's perfect. And announce the March live read along. So that was a spoiler alert here. Anyway, so if you're just landing here and you're wondering what is she talking about, so here we are reading, we are doing live readings of this adaptation of Little Women, and we have read so far the 11 chapters, 11 chapters of this book, and there are 14 chapters in total, and we have read 11 so far. And it's, if you don't really know about this story, very popular stories, a story about the four March sisters. It's a story about those four sisters in America, and they are not really poor, but they're not that rich as well. And they're trying to do everything that they can to try to get to make a living and support their sisters. So you have the two eldest sisters, Jo and Meg, who are working. They're 16 and 7 and 15, and they're working hard to get some money into the house because their dad is at war. It's the American Civil War, and is at war, and actually he was hurt. He is actually sick. During the story we learn, so the girls learn the state of their dad by telegram, and at some point their mother has to travel. She has to travel to Washington. They don't really say more specifically where they live, but it's probably in the middle. It's quite far away from Washington. And as you know, America is, I mean, the United States are quite big and it costs a lot to travel. So all the sisters and their friend, their neighbor called Laurie, is this very rich boy who lives with his grandfather. So he is rich from his grandfather, and he is going to make friends with the girls, the March sisters, and he is going to help them when they're struggling and when they're financially struggling, especially. And his grandfather is going to help them and is going to support them a lot as well. Um, um, we follow those four sisters with their ups and downs and all the joy that is happening in their life, but also the struggle. We were discussing this yesterday because yesterday we read chapter 11 and it was all about, yes, it was all about Beth, who is the third sister, and she got the scarlet fever. She got really sick, if you remember, Casey, and we got really scared because we thought that she was actually dying, but luckily she was she recovered from her illness thanks to Hannah, who is a servant in the house. So they have a servant, so it means that they're not a poor family, but they're not super wealthy either. They have to work to get money and pay for all the costs that they have, including the house and running the house, yeah, and paying the servant and paying the food and the clothes. So in chapter 11 yesterday, we read about Beth and how she got sick. I think that Beth was is working now. It seems like it doesn't say it specifically, but it seems like she was looking after this baby at the Hamill's house, and she got the scarlet fever from the baby, and the baby died. Well, family was devastated. And when Beth came home, she straight away asked her sisters, Meg and Jo, if they had scarlet fever before. And luckily, these two sisters had it already. So they were immune to the disease. But the youngest, Amy, never had it. So they sent away Amy to their aunt so that she wouldn't catch it from Beth, because you could actually die from this disease. So that was very serious. And the two sisters, Jo and Meg, got really scared and were very worried about their sister. And Jo actually believed that she had died at some point in the next morning, and but Hannah reassured her and said to her that it was actually a good sign that she was sleeping, because the fever had gone. And in the meantime, they called their mother to ask her to come back because they got really worried about their sister. So they asked her mother to come back. She was away visiting, well, looking after their dad or being at his side. They learned that the dad was getting better. So they finally, they had kept it from their mother. They kept the fact that their sister was sick. They kept it from her mother to not worry her. But as soon as they heard, they learned from the telegram that their dad was getting better, they told, they informed their mother that their sister was sick. So, so the mother was on her way to come back. And when Beth recovered, the mother arrived at the same time. So all ended well in the end. So it was a good fight. But in the end, they all was fine. The dad was getting better, and the mother and the daughter Beth recovered from the disease. So yeah, but it was kind of a a serious a very how to say frightening chapter, or yeah, a little bit worrying chapter, I would say. So let's read chapter 12. Let's get into this chapter. It seems like it's going to be much lighter than the previous one because it seems to be about love and Mr. Brooke. So let's see. When Beth woke from her long sleep, she looked into her mother's face and smiled. Then she slept again, but Mrs. March held on to her daughter's thin little hand. Hannah made breakfast while Meg and Joe listened as their mother told them about their father's health. And Mr. Brooks promised to stay with him. So Mr. Brooke, if you remember, Mr. Brooke is Laurie's tutor. So tutor is another word for teacher. It is like a private, it is a private teacher. Then Meg and Joe closed their third, they tired. Then Meg and Joe closed their tired eyes and were able to rest at last. Oh, it's going to be a short chapter. So here you can see the sisters, Meg, I don't know which one is Meg or Joe, looking after their sister, Beth. So we talked about this picture yesterday, and I was actually saying that it really shows how bound they are to each other, and it really represents the sisterhood and how they care for each other. Laurie went to give the good news to Amy at Aunt March's house. He too was tired after the long night and just managed to finish telling his story before he fell asleep in the chair. Amy began to write a short letter to her mother, but before she could finish, she saw Mrs. March coming towards her aunt's house. Amy ran to meet her. There were probably many happy little girls in the city that day, but Amy was the happiest of them all as she sat on her mother's knee. I've been thinking a lot about Beth, she said. Everyone loves her because she isn't selfish. People wouldn't feel half so bad about me if I was sick, but I like to be loved and missed. Hmm. I'm going to try and be like Beth as much as I can. That makes me think about the fact that it's very nice to see, and it really shows about the sisterhood actually that I was talking about. Instead of saying that, oh, of being jealous about her sister, oh, everyone like Beth, and nobody would think about that, would think of me like that, or would care so much if I was sick. And instead of saying, oh, I'm so jealous, and um, and being in this kind of attitude and hate her sister for it, she actually want is she is actually seeing Beth as a role model, and she wants to be like her. I'm going to try and be like Beth as much as I can. So it's having really the opposite effect that some people could have. And instead, the author here is intentionally showing that um, instead of being jealous of someone because that person receives the attention or is liked by people, instead of being jealous, then you know what? I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to try to be like her, or to see her as a role model and be someone that people would like to be around. And this is a very strong message in the end, because we've talked a little bit about this, the fact that we often in films or in the media, when they trying to portray women, you know, being judgy against each other and bickering. This is a nice expression in English, when you bicker, you know, and being jealous against each other. And we often portray women behaving like that, fighting, you know, over being the most popular or whatever. Oh, sorry. But instead, we can see that for centuries, women writers, or at least Louisa May Alcott, or other authors, we mentioned Jane Austen in her stories, most of the time, actually, women were showing the opposite of this image that men and patriarchal society has tried to construct in people's minds through, I don't know, it could be I mean, now it's television and the social media, but at the time it could have been, you know, in the newspaper, on posters in the streets, when they will do caricatures of women or important women. It's this thing. I've watched recently a documentary about Marie Antoinette, and how how we for years historians have portrayed, or even in the and teachers, history teachers have kind of for generation have passed on this message or this image of Marie Antoinette being someone that was unthoughtful against her people and who was frivolous and spending money and not being grounded. And this famous say that she said, oh, if they don't have bread, they could eat brioche. But she never told that. She actually never said that. And there is an intention of men and society as well to portray these at the highest of the state, you know, always portraying women being out of touch and completely and being silly, you know, not being and not understanding the politics and everything. But actually, in that documentary, it really shows the opposite and how Marie Antoinette was instrumental in dealing with the revolution. And but in the end, it didn't change their fate, but it really changed the narrative. And now, if we go back to the story, it really also shows that same, and it really shows that actually for a century, women actually were celebrating each other. And we have seen it with the suffragette movement and those kind of big revolutionary movement for the women's rights, that women were capable of changing things when they were, and they could do great things when they were holding each other's hands, and how powerful they could be. And this is why for a century men have tried to suppress and dominate women. But it goes beyond. I mean, I'm going beyond the book. But with this story as very simple as this, talking about four girls, you know, four little girls, four young women living in America and doing their own little and having their little lives and their little, you know, daily struggle, and their, you know, having their first, you know, encounters with Ben and love stories and dealing with disease or things like that. It doesn't seem much, but actually it doesn't seem to be very, you know, serious topic or something as serious as I don't know, another more I don't know. And it seems very simple, but actually it's much more subtle, and you can see the different layers from that story, and what it reveals about women at the time, and how Louisa, the writer, portrayed these women and showing a different side that we would think about young girls. So let's continue. Sorry about this momentary parenthesis. I close it. So where was I? Okay, so Laurie too was tired after the long night and just managed to finish telling his story before he fell asleep in the chair. Amy began to write a short letter to her mother, but before she could finish it, she saw Mrs. March coming towards her. She saw Mrs. March. Sorry, I read this. Yeah, actually, yes, we were talking about Amy, who was actually saying that she would love to be like Beth. I'm going to try and be like Beth as much as I can. Her mother kissed her. I'm sure you will succeed, she said. Now I must go back to Beth. Be patient, little daughter, and we'll soon have you home again. That evening, while Meg was writing to her father, Joe went upstairs to Beth's room and found her mother beside the bed as the little girl slept. I want to tell you something, mother, said Joe. Is it about Meg? Said Mrs. March. How quickly you guessed, said Joe. Yes, it's about her. Last summer, Meg lost one of her gloves at the Lawrence's picnic, and later Laurie told me that Mr. Brooke had it and kept it in his coat pocket. It fell out. It fell out once, and Laurie saw it. Mr. Brooke told Laurie that he liked Meg, but was afraid to tell her because she was so young and he was so poor. Isn't it all awful? Do you think Meg likes and cares about him? Asked Mrs. March with a worried look. I don't know anything about love, said Joe. Do you think she's not interested in John? Said Mrs. March. Who? Said Joe, staring. Mr. Brooke, said her mother. I call him John because we became good friends at the hospital. Oh dear, said Joe. He's been good to father, and now you let Meg marry him if she wants to? My dear, don't be angry, said Mrs. March. John told us quite honestly that he loved Meg, but said he would earn enough money for a comfortable home before he asked her to marry him. He wants very much to make her love him. He wants very much to make her love him if he can. He's an excellent young man, but your father and I will not agree to Meg marrying before she's 20. Okay. I want her to marry Laurie and be rich, said Joe. I'm afraid Laurie isn't grown up enough for Meg, said Mrs. March. Don't make plans, Joe. Let time and their own hearts bring your friends together. Meg came in with the letter for her father. Beautifully written, my dear, said her mother, looking at the letter. Please add that I sent my love to John. Do you call him John? Said Meg, smiling. Yes, he's been like a son to us, and we are very fond of him, said Mrs. March, watching her daughter closely. I'm glad of that, because he's so lonely. Was Meg quite was yeah was Meg okay. I'm glad of that because he's so lonely, was Meg's quiet answer. Good night, mother dear. Mrs. March kissed her gently. She does not love John yet, she thought, but she will soon learn to. Well, so this is the end of chapter 12. And chapter 13 is Laurie makes trouble and Joe makes peace. Oh, that's going to be interesting. So let me know what you think about this chapter. I thought it would have been a bit more juicy and more, a little bit more interesting, or I thought there would be more things happening between Meg and Mr. Brooke, that stuff would kind of shake up a little bit, or will unfold, a bit more information will unfold with this too, but it seems like nothing much is happening. So it's very short chapter here. Nothing much happens, except the fact that we know now for sure that Mr. Brooke loves Meg, and he's going to do everything for her to fall in love, or is going to do everything that he can to make her want to marry him, but nothing is really sure. Nothing. Yeah, we don't really know what. The thing is here, we don't really know what Meg thinks about Mr. Brooke. So she seems to like him, but nothing much really. We don't really know much here. So that's gonna be it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this very short reading, and that you enjoyed the topic that we approached. And also, if you see other topics coming into your mind with the reading of this chapter, and also with about the comments that I made about sisterhood and how the views on women, and how we've been portraying women for centuries. So please leave a comment below the video if you want to share your view as well. It would be lovely I would love to read your thoughts on this. So I'm going to say goodbye today, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And I will see you tomorrow for the reading of chapter 13. Bye.